So we're going to be talking about our top 5 Raiders, or top 5 favorite Raiders of all time. I guess I will go ahead and go first. And I know you are dying to hear my list.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued.
Okay. So
This is probably something that you wouldn't really usually think about,
uh-huh.
especially because in
Yeah.
your lifetime the Raiders haven't been too special.
So my number 5, and I don't want this to reflect the rest of the list because I swear the list gets better. But my number 5
I
is
swear to God.
Sebastian Janikowski.
Oh, that's great. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Question:
Janikowski,
Can I just I know you're gonna say like, no, I don't want to spoil it, but like, is Jimmy Garoppolo on this list?
no,
Because that's not fair. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, continue.
no. Jimmy Garoppolo is not on
You're
this
like,
this list.
no,
I had to do a double
no,
take.
I'm taking him off right now.
Yeah. God damn it. Can I have Jamarcus Russell? No. Janikowski was one of the best kickers I've ever seen. You know, around the time that I started watching football, I know it was like kind of further down in his career, but he was like lights out as a kicker. And, you know, he is the Raiders' all-time leading scorer. And, you know, so that's definitely cool. I witnessed that, right? And, you know, he will go down to me as, you know, one of the only kickers of all time that you could argue was worthy of a first round draft pick. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't normally take a kicker in the first round and be like, yeah, it was worth that pick. But you could argue that Janikowski was, because at the time he was drafted, the Raiders were on to the Super Bowl. And then, you know, Janikowski became, like I said, the all time leading scorer. And I think also what made me include him in my top 5 is the longevity he had, you know, with the team throughout my lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's why I picked him.
Dude. When you see, well, you're not going to see it, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 10 honorable mentions for my favorite Raiders of all time.
I
And
would have
the
said more
top,
for my Niners, but you know, I want to move it on.
yeah, I mean, the last 2 I could take out, but the last 4, I guess. I mean, either way, like the top 5 are definitely my top 5, but like the first 4 honorable mentions could have easily made it in. And like I wanted to like put a tie somewhere just to add in a 6th player. But I can't do that. Dude, this is so fucking tough because I want to change it like right now, but I can't. God, dude. My number 5 is Khalil Mack. And maybe you were expecting him to be higher on the list.
Probably, but I'm open. I'm open ears. It's all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the run that he had was absolutely special. It was like this mentality of you might be the best in football. Well, early on it was like, oh, he might be special, and then it became like, oh, he might be like really great, and then it was like, oh, you might be the best in football, and he won
Mm-hmm.
defensive player of the year at or he won defensive player of the year, but he also was all pro at 2 different positions. It was like, yeah, you might be a Hall of Famer, and then everything happens with the contract, and his first year with the Bears, he was still great, but like since then, like he hasn't been that guy, and it's kind of sad to say because he held a very special place in my heart. But I don't know. I really just wish he wasn't traded,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Real quick,
because
can I interrupt?
mm-hmm.
Khalil Mack on the Raiders was like Micah Parsons, but better.
Yeah, well, I would say mix like Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa together, and you get Khalil Mack because Khalil Mack, his physique was insane. He was so big, like he could bull rush you, but if he wanted to, he could spin move and he would defeat you. Like he is the best defensive lineman I've ever seen on the Raiders for a fact. You know,
Mm.
it just sucks that it was only for 4 years. Like I don't even know if he got his 5th-year option in before we traded him. I could be wrong, but it certainly felt like it was. It felt like it was only 2 years in hindsight. Like it went
It
by
was
so
him and
quickly.
Aaron Donald. It was him and Aaron Donald holding
Yeah,
out
yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah.
contracts.
You're right. Yeah,
Hey, we finally got it. It took to
no,
the end of the show, but we got it.
because they were the 2 best in football. That's what it was. Yeah, and you don't trade a player like that. But John Gruden did to start his rebuild. Yeah, that didn't. It sucks. And it tainted my view of Khalil Mack, I think, because if he had stayed on the team and he stayed as great as he was, he's probably my number one. You know, and that's kind of sad to say. Like, and that's something that could happen to Josh Jacobs for me, where I can't say. I'll tell you this. Josh Jacobs is an honorable mention on this list for me. He's not a top 5 player of all time for me, but someday he could be an all-time top 5 player. But if they get rid of him, that'll never happen for
No
me.
chance.
You know, yeah, it's like I want that to happen. So, yeah, it sucks. The whole thing with Khalil Mack sucks, but the time that we got with him was fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah, getting to see a Raiders player get Defensive Player of the Year was awesome because all I've ever known, other than him, MX Crosby, and a few other players who might be on this list, has been absolute dog shit for defense. You know, so seeing a Defensive Player of the Year for the Raiders was special.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Khalil Mack for me.
Okay, my number 4. Now, this might come to a surprise to you, but I promise you, I have a great justification. And this might be an even bigger surprise considering, well, I'll just say the name and then I'll say why it was a bigger surprise. Michael Crabtree. I think it's a bigger surprise because he wasn't even on my other list, the Niner list.
Right.
But I thought it was awesome to see the way that Crabtree was able to come in and make an impact on the Raiders. I feel like he made an impact on the Raiders that he just didn't make on the 49ers. Like he was more shifty and like elusive, like when he was a Niner receiver. But I feel like he was more of the, big body, physical, kind of one of the heartbeats to the offense. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a big moment when there was a big moment for a play to be made in 2016, the year that the Raiders were good. The ball was going to Michael Crabtree.
That is absolutely correct.
So I remember, the Niners were kind of dog shit at the time, and I want to say I was a senior in high school or possibly a junior. No, I think I was a senior. Depends when football season, if I'm getting the years. No, I was a senior. But Crabtree stepped up in 2016. And, just hearing my friends get excited about it. And, me watching, I watched a lot of the games in 2016. And so the catch that he made versus the Saints in week 1 set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Jack,
it was a gutsy call by Jack Del Rio, and it paid off because I feel like that was make or break for the season. You know what I mean? If Jack Del Rio doesn't go for that, they just go for the tie. Drew Brees is probably just gonna win it in overtime or march down the field or do typical Drew Brees stuff, and the Raiders will go back to being what they were for what they've been for the past 20 years. But that was a statement, dude. It was like, we're taking high risk. We're not gonna let you beat us. We're gonna fucking win the game.
Yep.
And that is something that I really haven't seen the Raiders do a lot of. And so that was definitely very memorable. And so I will always remember that play because that was crazy. It's like, you know what? We're gonna fucking win the game now. And a fade They threw up a fade to Michael Crabtree, and that was
Dude,
awesome.
Derek Carr had so much trust built into Crabtree. It was insane.
Yeah, the big play needed. It was him, and then there was also Seth Roberts was pretty good at the time.
Seth Roberts was good, but also like if you wanted like a deep shot, it was Amari Cooper, you know.
Yeah.
And also they would do a lot of like wide receiver screens to Amari Cooper. It was fun as fuck, man. It was fun. Yeah. And I think your choice for Crabtree at 4 is completely valid. I love it. And I will sprinkle in that he is another honorable mention for me. He is one of those 10, and he's not like a bottom 2 or 3. He's like right in the middle for me.
Him being a former 49er also kind of sweetens it for me. But really, if you ask me what I remember most about Michael Crabtree, it's probably his time on the Raiders because he was awesome in 2016.
Yeah. I'll say this, just to add to how much I really loved Michael Crabtree as a Raider. First off, when he signed, I didn't think anything of it other than like, oh, I don't know about that. You know, like, you know, he seems like kind of a diva, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, he just knowing how things go with the Raiders, it's like somebody goes to the Raiders and it's like, oh, their career just kind of flatlines. Like, no, Crabtree turned it up a level, you know, that was cool. But to give an idea of how much I love or appreciate Michael Crabtree, for my honorable mention, I put him above Darren McFadden. And Darren McFadden's like in that era, he was like the guy, you know.
He was the guy. That was all the hype. Everybody had a Darren McFadden jersey.
Yeah, because he was a high pick. He was the Raiders' Saquon Barkley. Look at it that way, like high pick. He's going to be great. Crazy college highlights, but shitty teams.
Yeah. Another thing I want to say, everybody's always going to remember, or at least, you know, the people who saw it live, Aqib Talib and Crabtree's fight when Talib snatched Crabtree's chain for the second time. It wasn't even the first time. It was the second time. They got into a huge fight. And I want to say that was 2017. So that wasn't even the year that they were like still good. Yeah. But
I was at the game. It was fucking crazy. Because I remember the play before that, it wasn't Talib on Crabtree. I want to say his name is Chris Harris. And I think Crabtree was blocking Chris Harris and like might have thrown him to the ground or did something that Chris Harris didn't like, you know. And then the next play, Talib was on Crabtree and he stole his chain and it was straight to the sideline, punches being thrown. But I was watching Chris Harris and Crabtree and like Chris Harris kind of throwing a fit. And I was like, what the hell? So the very next play from the start of the snap, I watched Crabtree on Talib because I knew they had a little history. And then I just watched them start pushing each other, shoving, and then one of them pushes them into the sideline. I was like, I stood up. I was like, oh, shit. And the play was already over. People were like, what? And I'm like, Crabtree. Like, dude, it was hilarious.
All right. So I guess you get to name your number 4.
Yeah. I did this. I made this decision when you were giving your number 3 all-time 49er, which was Nick Bosa. My number 4 is Max Crosby. I officially, maybe currently, but I think all-time, it will be for sure a fact. I appreciate Max Crosby more than Khalil Mack. Or maybe I favor him more, I should say. Because he just signed his second contract, and that shouldn't be a reason, but I know that I'm going to get 4 more years of him, you know, compared to Khalil Mack not getting that. But more than that, both of them, Max Crosby and Khalil Mack, were like all-time motor guys, you know. But I think Khalil Mack was more like a Josh Jacobs as a leader, which is lead by example. Whereas Max Crosby is, no, I'm going to lead this team. You know, I am the leader of this defense. I am the guy, you know. And obviously Khalil Mack was the guy, but like, you didn't see many videos of him like going out there and like I'm not to be like a rah guy or anything, but just like he seemed more quiet than you would expect from like the guy. Whereas
Mhm.
Max Crosby, like he's the face, and it's a fact, you know. Um, so I just everything I said about Crosby before, like he's my favorite player on the team right now. Um, I think he's quintessential leader for this defense and quintessential player for this team with the motor that he has and the intensity that he brings and just how hard he plays every single play.
Mhm.
And again, the same could be said about Khalil Mack. Um, I think the thing that leans me towards Max Crosby is probably recency bias.
I was gonna say, I think maybe a little bit of recency bias,
Mhm.
but it is kind of justified in terms of you're gonna get more Max Crosby because of the second contract, which Mac never got.
Yeah, which theoretically, if Khalil Mack was traded going into his fifth season, then I'm a training camp away from getting more Max Crosby than I ever got of Khalil Mack as a Raider, because this will be Max Crosby's fifth year. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Um, maybe this is his fourth year, but I'm pretty sure this is his fifth. So who gives a shit?
Mm,
But yeah. So Max Crosby four for me.
okay, so I get to go on to my number 3.
Yes, sir.
I'm going Derek Carr. Yeah. Um, I feel like Derek Carr's tenure with the Raiders, shouldn't be forgotten. That 2016 season with Carr, I think, was magical. And, I feel like, I similar to my points with Crabtree, 2016 was just like a great year for like, the Raiders. It truly was like, that's a year where you can like look back on like similar. I mean, not as successful as like 2019 was for the 49ers, but like a year where there was a lot of memorable moments, even during the regular season. A lot of close games. Um, I feel like Derek Carr led a lot of late game, game winning drives, and I think you guys played against Tampa Bay, and you guys set the record for most penalties in a game that you still won,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like it was just crazy. Carr was in command of that, and he was in the MVP conversation. And unfortunately, that was cut short. Due to his leg injury, and I don't think he was ever the same player after that. But still, like he was, he wasn't as bad as like people try to shit on him for. And you know, I still, even though even though he wasn't the same, I still enjoyed watching him lead the Raiders. I felt like he was like a good personality fit, like, in terms of like representing the team, or the vibe of the team,
Yeah.
kind of like an us against the world, kind of person,
Yeah.
or like
Can I say
um
something about that actually? Just really
mhm,
quick. Like you always mention like the Raiders needed a
a culture change. I was
culture
just going to
change.
get to that.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a good point of like he represented so well early on in his career that like us against the world mentality because he was young, you
Hmm.
know. But once you start to get older as the leader of the team, that's when players have to look up to you. And I think that's where it kind of changed because it's like this is kind of like I don't like saying this, but it's just this weird thing that I always had with him, like post 2016. And this is probably partially because his play got worse since 2016 for the most part. Um, at least I should say he got way less consistent and stuff. Um, and again, like winning fixes everything, but like it almost came off like he was being fake sometimes when he was like leading and like saying things like you could put that on me and stuff like that. Like he was just like saying what needs to be said, but like I don't know personally how he is as a leader. I don't know personally how players feel about him do players feel like he's being fake? I don't know. I've heard a lot of good things, not obviously not personally, but just from what I've seen from players saying that he's a top-notch leader. But like, I could see how when he was younger and he was 2016 and before that, where it's just like, let's go get him, guys, like we're gonna do it, because he's young and it's like, I'm the quarterback. It works. But then when he gets older and he's the veteran quarterback and he's the unquestioned face of the team, it like changes to where it's like, yeah, but we're losing, and it feels fake. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and you actually you got to see him in college, and you got to see him grow. And you met him before he was like the big starter, And I just remember back before he was the starter, I remember you saying something along these lines like, yeah, if the Raiders want to kind of get serious, they better start Derek Carr, or something along those lines,
because they had Matt Schaub at the time.
Yeah, like you were like, I seriously think Derek Carr would be a good quarterback for the Raiders, and like you called it, and Derek Carr was the franchise guy for a while. Like he became the highest paid quarterback, I think, at the time. He was making like $25 million a year, and it was, I mean, it was just cool to see from afar. And while I do feel like it was time for the Raiders to move on, I don't think Raider fans should take Carr's tenure for granted, because there are much worse options that you could have had at quarterback. And Carr, I mean, at least for that 2016 season, you know what I mean? For a franchise, for a fan base who has been just like in a drought, for so long, that was a really fun year of football. And you could probably still put on games from that year and probably still enjoy the memories.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah. Well, is it cool if I move on to my number 3?
Yeah. Move on. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah. So I could easily, maybe not easily, but I could flip 2 and 3. But my number 3 is Charles Woodson.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think the reason why he's number 3, and maybe in hindsight he should have been my number 5, but I do think I definitely favor him over Khalil Mack. I think with time, Max Crosby will probably surpass Woodson if Max Crosby keeps it up, Not in the sense to say that Max Crosby will have a better career than Woodson, but just, personally, my preference. I love what Crosby is. And Charles Woodson spent maybe over half of his career with the Packers, So there was a lot of time missed for me with Woodson. When I first became a fan of football, period, and of the Raiders, Woodson was on the Packers. And I had heard of Woodson. I had seen a lot of people wear Charles Woodson jerseys, but
and you had played with him in NFL Street.
I was just gonna say I loved playing with him. That sounds weird. Pause. On NFL Street. But I never got to see him as a Raider. And then free agency, whatever year it was, 2012 or whatever, they get him to come in for a visit. And I remember, it had never happened before. I've never heard of it happening since. Raider fans went to the Alameda headquarters for the Raiders to cheer on Woodson, just for him to show up to visit the team before even signing. When a player goes and Malcolm Kuntz visits the Bengals in a free agent visit. That's what Charles Woodson was doing. He was just visiting the Raiders, and fans showed up. Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, I've been to the Raider headquarters in Alameda. I think Joey had a field trip or something, and I tagged along. And I remember there was a lot of gangster rap, absolutely, I was young, so I didn't know what was playing. I just know there was curse word, tons of curse words, you know what I mean? And then so my dad's just ignore it. And Dude, I saw Randy Moss in person, and that was so cool to me. You know, like I'm a wee lad at the time, and then
Yeah.
my dad had a conversation with Warren Sapp.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so or like
That's pretty
maybe
cool.
said exchange a couple words with Warren Sapp, and I thought it was like super cool at the time. And like
Yeah.
these are guys that were like superstars in NFL streets. So I just want you to imagine like
No, they're legends.
yeah.
Period.
But
Damn.
you said the Raiders were cheering on Raider fans were cheering on Charles Woodson when he was at the headquarters.
Yeah, before he even signed, it was like just people letting him know, like, we want you here this bad, And sure enough, he signs, and the rest is kind of history, Like, he had a really great send off to his career.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it could have gone better for him. Like, okay, sure, he could have gone to a Patriots and won Super Bowls, but like, I think for his career, the way that his career was written, he already won his Super Bowl with the Packers. He won Defensive Player of the Year, like bona fide Hall of Famer. Come back home, let's write it off the right way, And he did
Mm-hmm.
that, and it was really cool. And not only did he do it, but he was like fucking 36 years old, playing like a 25-year-old in his prime at free safety. Of course, the Raiders draft him as a corner, comes back, plays safety. He's the best safety I've ever seen for the Raiders, period. And again, he was like 36 years old. So that should kind of tell you what kind of player Charles Woodson is, And as a leader, like as far as great leaders of a defense that I've seen, Charles Woodson is by far the best that I've seen in my life for the Raiders.
Another fun fact involving Charles Woodson is, the Raiders have been gone for a couple years now. I went to a baseball game last year, and or maybe it was 2 years ago, but I'm pretty sure it was last year. I went with my brother. He got tickets like for the Mathletics or something, or the Home Run Readers, something like that. Maybe it was 2 years. It doesn't really matter. But I think we were sitting on Mount Davis, like in right field. I think it's called the Treehouse thing. It is something like the Treehouse Club or whatever. And the seats were not very good. You're getting blocked by like a little picnic area and like the poles, so you miss a lot. You like cannot see right field, right? But on the elevator up in the Coliseum, still inside of Mount Davis, there was still pictures of Charles Woodson. And that's just a little fun fact. It's been how many years? The Raiders were already long gone, and they still have Seawood there. So
yeah, Charles Woodson's just a all-time Raider. Like, there's not a person that's a Raider fan that can say a negative thing about him.
Mm-hmm.
So give me your number 2.
My number 2 is Khalil Mack. Yeah. I'm just going to keep it, short and sweet, but Khalil Mack was like one of the most badass players I've seen on the Raiders. He was a badass defender, and, he's arguably the best Raider I've seen in my life. He was just so dominant on the defensive side of the football, and, he was so fun to watch on the Raiders. And I still think he's a good player, like in the NFL now. He's not what he was.
No,
I think,
but he's still great.
But he's still great, and
you still don't want to see him if you're an offensive lineman.
But he was just a fucking beast, dude. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like, it was fun to watch Khalil Mack play defense.
Yeah. He was built different.
Yeah. I'm here.
So then, do you want my number 2?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to leave you guessing with my number 1 here. My number 2 is Derek Carr.
I feel like I know who your number 1 is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. If you and I have the same number 1, I doubt it if it's who I think it is, but there might be another guy where I'm like, oh, that might be the same one as mine.
See, I just had an idea for who your number 1 might be, but then I just lost it. I have no idea who your number one is. Oh no, I know who your. I think I know who your number one is, but it can't be because. Anyways, Derek Carr. Um, this is probably going to end up being like, okay, if you asked me again in 10 years, what I hope happens is that in 10 years from now, Derek Carr isn't even on my top 5 list at all because I will have a new quarterback on that list, and it won't be Jimmy Garoppolo. Hopefully, it'll be a guy that is like in his 4th year with the Raiders. And
If Jimmy
he's
Garoppolo
tearing the league.
leads the Raiders to a Super Bowl this year, would he surpass Derek Carr?
If he wins the Super Bowl, he would surpass Derek
If he
Carr
wins the Super Bowl this year, he would surpass Derek Carr
easily.
easily. Oh wow,
Easily. That's how desperate I am to win the Super Bowl. I don't give a fuck.
Mhm.
Yeah, but my point being, like, I guess similar to like the Khalil Mack and Max Crosby thing with recency bias. I think that someday my soft my soft side to Derek Carr will waver a little bit because for as great as his highs were and as fun as his time with the Raiders was, again, during the highs, the lows were like very low.
Mhm.
And especially the past 3 years and 2017. Like 2017 was just plain bad, in my opinion, coming off of 2016. And again, that's coming off of injury. He wasn't the same, yada, yada, yada. There also was a major offensive coordinator change that should have never happened, going from Musgrave to Downing. That was just stupid.
Mhm.
But again, the past 3 years, like, he just wasn't consistent. Like, I mean, 2016, he wasn't like overly consistent, but he was a gunslinger. It's like
Mhm.
once Downing came in, he less confident. And then Gruden came in and he had his confidence back, but it was like, but he's not a gunslinger anymore,
Mhm.
He wasn't like this fucking, hot shot quarterback anymore. He was like up and down, like essentially a Kirk Cousins. And you can't get too excited about a Kirk Cousins. So there came a point where my soft side for him being the franchise quarterback that we drafted and that early on I was like crazy about, as far as like,
It kind of
oh
dwindled.
yeah, he can be our greatest quarterback ever. And he became that statistically. And it didn't matter because he didn't win anything major, Um uh yeah, I like a big part of this is because I was young and I just wanted to see a franchise quarterback for the Raiders because I hadn't seen that in my fandom, and I got that. Now I want to see a top 5 quarterback in the league be our franchise quarterback and lead us to win the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
That is what I'm looking for. And when that happens, Derek Carr will not be on my top 5 list, period.
Okay, I've got a question for you. So, you sound very disappointed when you talk about Derek Carr and at least how things ended.
And yeah, he's my
If
number 2 all time.
yes, and he's your number 2 all time. If Derek Carr, let's just say he has a very successful season with the Saints, does that change how you feel about the end of his tenure with the Raiders?
No, because I expect him to have a great season with the Saints. To a
Mhm.
degree. I mean, I could see it being middle of the pack, but I expect it to be better than what the Saints had last year, which will be looked at as a very good season. Um,
Like, I'm not saying this will happen, but what if Derek Carr goes to the NFC Championship game? You know what I mean? Would
right.
you try and live vicariously through that? Or would you
Oh,
say,
no,
man,
for sure.
like, like how Lions fans kind of did with Stafford?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I would do that for sure. Because like I said, like I have this soft spot for him. Like when I talk negatively about him, it's the Raider fan talking, you know. But when the Derek Carr fan comes out, it is a person that very much cares for him and appreciates the shit out of him. The Derek Carr fan ranked him number 2 on this list. But in 10 years from now, if we have a great quarterback leading us for 10 plus years, the Raider fan will take over and say, Derek Carr, it was fun, but it was also sad, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rooting for him. I think he can be very good. I think he can go to an NFC championship. I'd love to see him win a Super Bowl. Would it make me feel different? It wouldn't make me feel different about like Josh McDaniels, if that's what you're kind of trying to ask. Not that I'm trying to say that you're like specifically asking that, but just like
No, I guess that is kind of what I'm asking. Like,
right.
would it
That's what
make you
everybody
feel
would be
like
pointing out.
Carr is a little, I guess, is vindicated the right word? Vindicated for the way that things ended, and make you feel like, man, Josh McDaniels kind of blew it.
Well, in my opinion, and this is probably the Raider fan talking, trying to, keep optimism with Josh McDaniels. Bear in mind, this is only his first season now, going into his second season. I can't give full judgment on McDaniels yet. The person that I lay a lot of blame on is John Gruden, because he fucked the team up completely. That 2016 team was eradicated by 2018. Trading Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, that was the foundation, and then he had to start over, and eventually we had Max Crosby, Josh Jacobs, but that's it, and then Derek Carr, who is struggling because his offensive line starts to get worse, because at first they overpaid all the guys and they were good, but then blah 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 blah, whatever. Derek Carr is always a huge long conversation. At the end of the day, the soft spot that I have for him is massive, because his time was special to me. But the Raider fan in me knows that time will eventually not fucking matter. Someday they're going to win. They're going to get consistent. And I'm not going to think about Derek Carr. But for now, he's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen on this team. And for that, I appreciate the shit out of it,
Mm-hmm.
Well, but I want
maybe you might think about it. Maybe you might think about it maybe the same way that old school 49er fans kind of, remember Steve DeBerg, because he was the quarterback right before Joe Montana, and you don't get much better than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So that, I mean, I could definitely see, you're like, Derek Carr you hope Derek Carr doesn't matter. But I think also you can maybe take that with you, like, because I don't think I will ever forget the Derek Carr Raiders, even if the Raiders go on and win Super Bowls and have a dynasty. I'll still I will still remember the 2016 season. For me personally.
Yeah,
but I'm not like a huge fan of the Raiders. You know what I mean? I just I'm respectful of the Raiders.
Derek Carr will always be a nostalgic, like, oh, that was fun thing for me. Like when you were talking about Derek Carr, I wanted to talk about what will always probably be one of my favorite all-time games, which was the Carolina Panthers game at home that I was at in 2016. Cam Newton's coming off of what I want to say was his MVP season. And we're beating the shit out of the Panthers. And then Derek Carr takes a snap and the ball hits his pinky.
Oh, and it bends sideways.
And he dislocated the shit out of it. Possibly broke it, but I think it was just dislocated. And you see it, and he's like, oh, he's like freaking out, and he goes off to the side. He fumbled the ball. The Panthers got it, I think. Or maybe we did, but it doesn't matter. But he's gone for a full quarter, And in that time,
popped that shit back in.
Maybe it was probably half a quarter. But in that time, the Panthers came back and possibly took the lead. And then Derek Carr comes and trots out, and they go and win the game. And then Khalil Mack ends the game. And that was the big 1-2 punch that I fucking loved was Carr and Mack. It was like we have the foundation on both sides. It's so well set up. It's like you just need to build up the defense, blah blah blah. But John Gruden, so.
So my turn to give my number one, and I want you to guess because you said you think you know who it is.
Well, I think who it should be is Charles Woodson.
This is not Charles Woodson.
Was it during the Derek Carr
era? Yes. And I will say Charles Woodson is close. I will give you that hint.
So he's on defense.
No.
Oh. So he's old.
Yes.
What? And he is a player.
Yes. Not anymore.
Right. But he was a player, like whatever.
I believe that's what our list is.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, like, this isn't like John Gruden, is it?
No.
John.
Speaking of John Gruden, I don't know why this came into my mind right now. I just have like the image of John Gruden jogging. I don't know why they just fucking cracked me up right now. Just the way that he would jog on a football field.
Is it Darren Waller?
No.
What the fuck? You said he's on offense?
Yes.
Is he an offensive lineman?
No. You want me to tell you? Or do you want to try and guess?
I know. I don't want to take this too long, so I'm just going to give out like 3 quick guesses. I mean, one of them's Amari Cooper, but I don't think that's it. Is it Devontae Adams?
No.
Damn, I don't know. Third guess really quickly. Latavius Murray.
No. So I will reveal it now. My number one favorite Raider of all time. I said it was close to Charles Woodson because they wore the same number. Marshawn Lynch. I love Marshawn Lynch, dude.
Wow. Okay. I forgot about Marshawn Lynch. Damn it.
Yeah. I bet you want to add him to your honorable mentions. Maybe. I mean, it wasn't that he was dominant as a player on the Raiders, but dude embodied the city of Oakland. He wanted to be there. He was about Oakland. If there's, I don't think there's another professional athlete in any sport who like really represents his community better than Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
So I just love his personality, and even though most of his career was on the Seahawks and they were the rival of the 49ers, I always had respect for Marshawn Lynch. He was that player that I kind of hated him at one point, but like once you start to like get to know the player, it's like he's a guy that you really can't hate. You know what I mean? And I respect the hell out of his game. I never didn't respect his game, and I respect everything he's all about. And he gives back to the community. He spends Thanksgiving giving out turkeys to people in Oakland. He will casually just be around Oakland. You know what I mean? And he was so happy. For those of you who don't know, he retired, on the Seahawks. He didn't want to play football anymore. But he was willing to come back only to play for the Raiders. And he said it best. He said, no offense to you, to all the Seahawk fans, but I'm from Oakland, though. I'm really, really from Oakland, though. Like, Marshawn really wanted to play for the Raiders. I think, that's cool. That was his childhood team, and he got to have that experience. Just him dancing on the sideline. You were there, weren't you? You saw that in person.
That was fucking sick.
And so, like, even though he was only on the team for 2 years, I think, or was it 3?
I feel like it was 3, but it might have just been 2.
Even though he was only there for a short period of time, it was like, man, this is the perfect guy to be on this fucking team. There's nobody that the Raiders will ever be able to add to their team to where it's like, yeah, dude, I think he's more Oakland, or well, I guess now it would be Vegas, but like, he would give some of the most memorable interviews. Protect y'all chickens, protect y'all bodies, because
run through a motherfucker face.
Yeah, run through a motherfucker face. Don't gotta worry about him no more. Like, I love to see when he's in commercials and everything because he's just fucking hilarious, dude.
Yeah, he's an all-time funny personality.
And then not only that, like I genuinely believe, I don't know because I don't know him personally, but I genuinely believe he's probably a good guy. He's a smart business guy too. He's like invested in esports teams. I want to say he's the owner for the Bay Area Panthers, the indoor football league. Like, Marshawn is about the Bay Area. Like, I think he specifically probably cares more about Oakland than the Bay Area, but dude, he's smart. Like, I think he just represents us all in the Bay. And he didn't even want to play football anymore, I guess, for the Seahawks at the time, but as a good person that I think he is, he returned to Seattle when they needed running backs. They were out of running backs, and then they in 2019 he went back and he started against the 49ers. Mm-hmm. So I want to say he was retired again. I think he retired for the Raiders. He came out of retirement just to play for the Seahawks. And at the time, I was like, God damn it, dude! Like, get the fuck out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the Seahawks almost won that game. So, yeah, I mean, it is just crazy. Like, Marshawn Lynch is one of those players. He might not be a Hall of Fame running back. He really might not be. He was a great running back, and he will be a player that I don't think I will ever forget. Even if he never makes the Hall of Fame, he is a player that should not be forgotten.
Agreed. The greatest run I've ever seen is the Beastquake.
Yeah. It's one of the best
greatest runs, right? Yeah, ever. Yeah, no, that's a great choice, and you definitely convinced me. Well, it didn't take convincing; it was more just I forgot to put him in my honorable mention.
Real quick. I just he may not be an all-time Raider, but like I said, I will never forget him.
Yeah, no, and the way that he represented the city is why I will put him on honorable mention. Like, he just fits so perfectly with the Raiders, and he grew up a Raider fan. It's like anybody that grew up a Raider fan and becomes a player, you automatically love that. Like him, Derek Carr. Yeah, I like that shit.
I've been waiting a while to share that number 1 pick with you.
No, that's good. That's good.
And I genuinely surprised you. You couldn't guess it.
No, I couldn't. I didn't even think of it because I forgot. I just didn't. Yeah. Because he didn't have that much time with us,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think my number 1 is?
Is it Zach Miller?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Wow.
So, Zach Miller, anybody that watches this is probably going to go,
huh?
Like, not at least 90% of them are probably going to be like, I'm sorry? What? If not saying who, they're saying why. And like, I was making my list and I'm like, where am I putting Zach Miller? Because I have to put him on here. Like, he is that special to me. And the reasoning is simple. Wow.
Yeah, show's over.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for watching tonight. No, but
this will never happen again. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, the reasoning is simple. I am in 6th grade, middle school, and it's October of 2009, and I go to my first Raider game with my dad, a couple of his buddies, and it's against the Eagles. I want to say Donovan McNabb was the quarterback. Andy Reid was the head coach. Deshaun Jackson was like their big up-and-coming player, and we didn't let them score a touchdown in that game. It was a very low-scoring game. The only touchdown scored in that game was an 86-yard scamper by Zach Miller. And I was sitting in the third deck of that end zone that Zach Miller was running towards. And, we had a long talk earlier about the A's, and to put a little bit more context, like, I grew up an A's fan. I grew up a baseball fan. I grew up playing baseball, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's the sport I knew. And, as it happens in Oakland, the Raiders and A's played in the same stadium. So I had something to compare, when attending both games. So I had known as a kid all my life what an A's game felt like, sounded like, and all that, the atmosphere, right? And then I go to this Raider game for the first time. And, you and I talked about, like, Raider games selling out. And I told you, like, once the Jamarcus Russell era was over, that's when the Raiders started selling out again, the stadium, filling the stadium. It was like after 2010 or so. Because in 2009, Jamarcus Russell was the quarterback for this team that I attended for my first ever game. And he threw the pass that made me a Raider fan, a diehard football fan. So I could partially thank Jamarcus Russell for being a diehard football fan like I am today. But I give all the praise to Zach Miller. Oh, fuck yeah, let's do it. Thank you.
Is it this one?
Yes, it is.
Russell throws and finds Zach Miller, the tight end. Miller breaks away. Still going, got a great block down the sideline. Inside the 20, inside the 10, he's in, touchdown!
Louis Murphy, number 18, was doing all that blocking. So those are the three people, in my opinion, that are responsible for me being a massive fan that I am today. It's Zach Miller, Jamarcus Russell, and Louis Murphy. And I'm not putting Jamarcus Russell as tied for my first favorite player. I will tell you that.
You're putting him above.
Yeah. So, but my point that I was getting to is, like, I attended all those A's games, and I'd seen so many home runs, stolen bases, double plays in a similar crowd, at the same exact stadium, and not anything that I saw at a fucking baseball game matched what I felt, heard, and witnessed in that 86-yard touchdown play. That's what changed it for me. So you could say it's Jamarcus Russell and Zach Miller and Louis Murphy. For me, when you really think about it, it's just fucking football. That's why football is king. It's because it is the best sport in all of sports, in my opinion. Yeah, and Zach Miller scoring that 86-yard touchdown was my first major memory towards football, and that's something that will always stick with me. Anytime I see that play, I'll smile. It was really cool. But the other thing about Zach Miller, because I have to talk about the player, is he was a fucking all-around player. Like, sure-handed as fuck. If somebody threw him a pass, he was catching it. He did not drop the ball. He was arguably the best blocking tight end in football at the time. And I say at the time because I would say George Kittle's a better blocker than him. But if you watched Zach Miller live and you watched him run block, like, that shit was no joke. And he ended up going to the Seahawks, winning a Super Bowl or two with them. And,
he was on that Seahawks team?
He was on the Seahawks when they won Super Bowls.
It had to have been one. It had to have been one.
I think it's just one. Okay, so there you go. But still, he won a ring with the Super Bowl, or with the Seahawks. And yeah, I mean, he was big in the run game. He was at one point their starting tight end. And I was a very sad young kid when he left. But I still followed him and I rooted for him, and it was cool to watch him win the Super Bowl. But I always felt like he was an all-around player. Like, he, to me, is a fucking football player. Like I said, blocked, caught, he could run with the ball 86 yards. To me, he could do it all, but because of the teams that he was on, and because he was kind of viewed more like maybe a little bit more of a blocking tight end than a pass-catching tight end, he was never used to get 100 targets in a season. He wasn't getting that. But if he did, he was on the trajectory to be the greatest tight end in Raiders history. Maybe I shouldn't say the greatest, but the Raiders have some good tight ends in their history. Dave Casper, Todd Christensen, okay, and legends, of the past. Statistically, a la Derek Carr becoming the all-time leading scorer and passer for the Raiders, Zach Miller was on a trajectory to be the all-time leading tight end for the Raiders in their history, but then he left in free agency. So
I think I just want to say that your choice for number one, and maybe also my choice for number one, but especially yours, it just proves why football is such a beautiful game. It's like you just have these memories, and you could compare it to other sports, but like you said, it doesn't compare to anything you've ever witnessed at a baseball game. And it's that one play that just got you excited about the sport, And then so your number one favorite player, you might be the only Raider fan who that's your favorite player, But I want to just kind of quickly, say to the audience, when we talk about stuff on here, we're giving our genuine opinion and our actual thoughts. We're not. We try not to regurgitate what other people also think. You know what I mean? So, I think that your reasoning for having Zach Miller as your number one favorite player, it's just touching, because it's like listening to you're telling such a fond memory of your childhood and growing up. And honestly, I think that's what it's all about. I think football, one of the things I love about football is that, every single Sunday, it seems like memories are created, and then so maybe it might be a boring Sunday of football. Maybe there's terrible games on, and maybe that Raider game was a terrible game. But there's a kid sitting in the stands. That is their first game that they've ever been to. And there's a big play, and they take that home with them, and they might not ever forget that for the rest of their life. And that player, that might have been that one player's only touchdown ever in their career. But that might be their favorite player ever because of that memory. It's like when Tom Brady talks about the first football game he ever went to was the NFC Championship. And he, I think his favorite player was Joe Montana, and Tom Brady grew up a 49er fan, and he grew up into this legend, And, people will argue that he surpassed Joe Montana, but it's just amazing, how, the way that, something so that can seem so small to somebody can have such a ginormous impact on somebody else. So
Yeah. One last thing.
your
And then
honorable mentions.
Oh, I do want to say that, but one last thing about Zach Miller, just about that whole story. Like, from your experience, do you think that I'm good at like catching a football? Because we play catch here and there, Do you think I'm good at it?
Well, just as long as you don't tell everybody that I'm not good at throwing a football. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm okay at throwing a football. Okay. I love to throw a football. Yeah. I just want everybody to know I love to throw a football. It's just I need to work on my spiral, just a smidge, right? But yes, you were good at catching a football. I think you were good. And is part of that due to you trying to replicate Zach Miller?
Yeah, like I wasn't trying to be a cocky little prick or nothing. I was just like, I can catch like a one-headed catch like here and there pretty well, like not every time or nothing, but like I was playing catch with my little brother this past weekend, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, dude, I still got it, but like, but yes, the point of the story is that night, because it was like a 1 p.m. game, it might have been a 10 a.m. game in Oakland. And we tailgated and everything. We went in a trailer. But that day, because I just so happened to have a football, but I never played catch like at all. I was baseball. I had glove and ball, throw and catch with glove. And then I got home that night and I was like, Dad, let's play catch with a football. Like, I swear to God, dude. It was like, instant. And then like literally every day, like my childhood was I would get home from school and I would want to ride my bike just back and forth in my street, like just getting energy out. From that game on, it was, Dad, let's play catch. And I would run routes just like side to side in the front yard, and he would throw it and I would like run and catch it. Yeah, like that. It was just everyday practice every single day.
I know I hesitated to answer the question, but yes, you were very good at catching the football. My hesitation mainly comes from I'm just kind of tired, so I had to think about what you were asking me. What is Mike good at catching a football? Yes, you're good at catching a football.
Thank you. Well, you're also very good at catching a football and throwing a football.
Thank you. Question before you give your honorable mentions. You mentioned your brother and you were playing catch with Kyle. So Kyle's dad is a Niner fan and you are a Raider fan. I don't even know that Kyle watches football. He probably still doesn't. But do you know if Kyle leans one way or another in terms of Niners or Raiders? Or
I think he leans Niners, but he really doesn't care like that. Yeah. He's really into like fishing right now. Before that, he was like into bikes and stuff. I'm gonna get him into football at some point. I think but I'm kind of also just figuring it'll naturally happen. Because
you take your dirty hands off of him. He's a Niner.
But no, well, I think he'll end up just kind of liking both teams, But
or who knows? Maybe this will be his favorite show to watch because he'll get the perspective of both.
Right.
And I'd like to think that we've both been respectful of each other's teams.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Kyle is like, what sucks to me is like I can't just take him to a home game any given Sunday now because they're in Vegas, But someday.
What are they doing in the end zone over there?
They're taking a bomb rip, Kyle. Yeah. All right,
I want to play on those arcade machines, like those fucking slot machines, stinks like cigars and.
Kyle, you put $100 bill in what? So my honorable mentions. By the way, one of my earphone died.
Yeah.
Like this is like perfect timing.
Okay.
So first off, this first guy, I wanted so badly to put him in my top 5, but I was thinking about it more and more, and I'm like, I can't. He is 100% though my top honorable mention, and that is Jacoby Ford.
Okay.
Do you remember him?
I remember his name.
Okay. When Zach Miller left, immediately Jacoby Ford was my next like favorite player. Like the whole time Darren McFadden was there, but it was like, oh, he's the popular choice, you know, and he's always injured. And Jacoby Ford, I went to a Chiefs game. And honestly, I'd kill for you to play that highlight too, but you don't have to. But just Jacoby Ford versus the Chiefs. Jason Campbell was the quarterback, and they won it in overtime. And like Jacoby Ford just took over the second half. At the beginning of the second half, it was like Chiefs were up 10-0. Jacoby Ford returns the kick out of halftime for a touchdown. And then like later in the third quarter, he gets like 3 catches. One of them was like this crazy like diving deep catch. It was weird and awkward looking, but he caught it. And then fourth quarter, like 2-minute drill just took it over. Every pass was going to Ford. It was like, what the fuck? And then overtime, like second play, just a deep post, dives, catches it. And that was a sold out crowd. So that was my first sellout crowd moment where everybody collectively went, ah! It starts like screaming, you know? I literally turned to my dad and I was like, this is the kid thing, okay? I was like, that's what I want for Christmas. I want his jersey. Like I was just like, like you said about like, yeah. But that was like with you with Kaepernick, like you see it and you're like, I'm obsessed. Like with me, Jacoby Ford, I was like, I'm obsessed. 4.3, no, 4.28, 40, no, 4.33, I think. 40-yard, like super fast, but he was short. He should have been a slot receiver, but yeah, they were so weak that he was like the number 1 receiver for a point.
Mm-hmm. If only you were British, you know, so that way when you were in the stands, Daddy, I want his uniform.
Jacoby Ford.
Jacoby Ford. Typically an American truck. Perhaps I can be persuaded. To all you British people out there watching, I don't even know if you like football.
Yeah.
But if you do, welcome.
Hell yeah. So I'll just kind of go through the rest of the list. These are in order. So Jacoby Ford, Sebastian Janikowski, Nnamdi Asomugha. I would have loved to have gotten Nnamdi in my top 5, but I couldn't. Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lynch, Richard Seymour, Michael Crabtree, Darren McFadden, Tyvon Branch, former strong safety, Rodney Hudson, recent
Darren
center for the
Waller.
Raiders. Oh, you know what? Actually, yes. I didn't have him, but yes, Darren Waller.
Clive Walford. No, I'm just kidding.
I will put Darren Waller right here. Actually, I'll put Darren Waller above like Michael Crabtree. And then my last honorable mention is more just kind of funny, but C.O. Moore. Josh, let's end it with this. Josh, can you search up and share the screen? C.O. Moore, Khalil Mack sack celebration.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something else.
What, the C.O. Moore?
Kaepernick.
Like, oh, no. I do remember that. Wow, so you do remember C.O. Moore then.
I do remember C.O. Moore. And then I remember, I think Del Rio got rid of him.
Yeah,
and he was like sending a statement. Like, we don't need him. And then you guys were good.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, Del Rio's like a fucking good coach.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said C.O. Moore.
Khalil Mack sack celebration.
Okay.
You might remember it, but yeah. Just classic.
Okay, real quick, I'm going to share my screen for YouTube. Tell me which video it is.
Try the go down. Try the
Probably
16-second one. Yeah, do that one. Do that one. It's a bad angle, but fuck it. Look at 42 seconds left in the game.
I'll tell you what, Moore might want to get back in position.
Oh my god.
So wait, play it back one more time.
Oh, hold on. There's a great ass show fucking
Oh,
on
look
right
at
now.
that. Yeah.
Smith in trouble. Smith wrapped up.
So I can't tell what down it is. I feel like it's probably third down.
28.
So they were celebrating because they
Did it
felt like,
say?
oh, that's game. They're gonna punt.
Oh, it's third and
Third and
six.
6. Third and 6. So they sack him. Justin Tuck is on this team, number 91. Okay, he was like the veteran leader. Watch 91 when it cuts back.
Moore might want to get back in position.
Watch
Where's 91?
He's probably right above the Raiders' face right now. That's got to be him.
Him right here?
Yeah, I would think so. Just watch him.
Him, right?
Yeah. He's gonna call timeout. Calls timeout, and I watch him. God damn it! He's pissed off. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?" Calls timeout, and I watch him.
Who are these handsome young individuals?
But yeah, that was a hilarious play.
that is pretty funny. Yeah.
Like Seymour literally runs 30 yards the opposite direction of the play just to celebrate. Like Seymour was so excessive with his celebrations, and I fucking loved it.
That's
But
like
he almost lost us the game.
yeah, that's like a Key and Peele sketch. You know what I mean?
Yes. And the best part is that Khalil Mack's like, hell yeah, and he's like dapping him up and stuff, and then he looks back and goes, oh fuck, and starts running.
Yeah.
Just idiots.
I don't know
Oh,
why it kind of like gives me Cleavon from Idiocracy vibe. Like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck all y'all.
Yeah.